Hey man, this is Austin St. John. I played Jason, the original Red Ranger. You are listening to my interview, man, with Elaine Goodman at gogoodman.com.au.
I read that you are of German, Irish, Italian, and Scottish descent. Do you remember aspects of each culture in your home growing up?
Well, my mother's maiden name was O'Yancey, and they dropped the O when they got to America because it wasn't a good thing. So, I mean, I remember hearing talk about it. It wasn't really, there was no Irish brogue or anything like that in the house. It's not like we had, shepherd's pie every day or fish and chips or anything along those lines. But, we certainly had discussion about it, and it was pretty cool. We certainly had German food. My father cooked a lot of German food. It was pretty amazing. But I still miss some of it today. It was really good. Once it's done right, and I've learned the difference between good German and not so good German. As far as the others go, it was more discussion oriented as opposed to anything else. So it was bits and pieces, but nothing too extreme.
Did each grandparent have a cool different accent?
No. I wish that had been more of the case, but it wasn't. It was, everybody was pretty Americanized by the time I met. And my grandparents had passed on shortly after I was around, so I didn't get to discuss with them maybe like I would like to have.
And I believe your first passion was baseball, so how did martial arts come about?
Well, my father put me into martial arts, as did my mother. But baseball was baseball was the first sport I fell in love with. Martial arts was kind of mandatory early on, so it was a little bit different for different reasons,
Why do you say it was mandatory? Was your father into martial arts earlier as well?
Oh, absolutely. And he was pretty particular about, that I needed to study, that it was important for discipline and focus and drive and patience and, so many other things that at the time I didn't appreciate. And as time has gone on, I certainly do now. It's an integral part of who I am and of who anybody is that studied, even if you're not practicing anymore. Once you've done it and you learn those values, they're hard to just let go. They become a part of you, even if your skills, wax and wane without practice.
How old do you think you were when martial arts became a priority and you started seeing those effects of martial arts have an impact on your life?
Probably immediately. I just didn't quite get it yet. But all throughout my life, I've used them again and again and again. And I'm not talking about, beating people up or, anything along those lines. I've certainly had to defend myself once or twice, but, really, it's been much bigger than that. Patience, all the time, especially now as a father with children. It's, man, I think in my humble beliefs, men just aren't built with the same patience that ladies are. And I watch how my wife deals with my children, and I am just wowed every time I see it. I don't have that same patience, and I have to work at it in order to find it, whereas it appears easy for her,
Yeah.
Or easier anyway.
Yeah, we're just go-getters, aren't we?
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
And you've practiced, I read, a lot of variations of martial arts, about 6 or 7 or 8 over your life. But through primary school and early high school, when you're just getting into, studying and trying to, I guess, make something of your life through your teenage years, was it hard to pick and choose which ones you wanted to keep and which ones you wanted to give up for the moment, or try to juggle martial arts with kind of a social life and studying?
No, it was all pretty easy. I made time, and I wasn't super social because I was always either in school or training, or in football or in baseball or in whatever sport I'd get my hands on. That's where my socializing took place. It was with teammates and, with the challenge and the competition, throughout my early years and teenage years. So, I guess I got a lot of socialization there, but I wasn't out hanging with the kids on the block pounding beers at 16. That wasn't part of my DNA.
You've mentioned all these other sports, so you were quite a sporty kid growing up. You were trying all different kinds of sports. It wasn't just martial arts.
Right. Yeah, I was doing everything I could. I really was, and I loved it. I loved it, and I still do that. You know, I'm always looking for the new challenge. I'm always looking for something I haven't done, and part of it came from moving around so much as a child. You know, Dad was a Marine. We moved every 9 months to a year, almost through my teen years. So I got to the point to where I didn't like being in any one place or one thing for too long. I wanted and needed and expected the change, and I liked the thrill of it and the constantly having to learn and adapt and better myself for it. And, you know, there were times where I hated it too, you know, but that's like any job or any place. There's always a jerk somewhere you don't want to be around. You just treat them kindly, and otherwise don't treat them like they even exist, and that's the best way to defeat the jerks in the world, you know. So I learned a lot of valuable lessons, and it worked great for me.
Now, tell me about this dare to audition for Power Rangers. Were you finished school? Are you still friends with the person that dared you to do it? What were your expectations going in?
We don't talk a whole lot anymore. We've kind of lost touch over the years, but you know, it was $20 bet. You know, hey man, I'll bet you $20 you won't be wasting your time if you go for this audition.
Oh, so he was kind of the positive one. You were kind of the skeptical one.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I wasn't an actor. I thought, are you nuts? What are you talking about? And but then I thought, that's so much money for a week, you know, in the '90s, and you know, we're a gas tank. And so I went, and I'll be damned if I didn't get a call back, multiple callbacks, and thousands of guys fighting for this role. And next thing I know, you know, I was signing a contract. So
do you kind of thank him for pushing you to do it, or?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw him, I was like, hey, wow, you know, you were right. That was pretty awesome and amazing, and you know, really cool. And you know, so it worked out. But at the time, I was definitely skeptical, and he was pretty cool. He knew better than I did. He was much older, much wiser, knew the business, the industry, and I certainly didn't. You know, I was learning, and I was on a crash course for sure.
What was your impression of the whole audition experience, having to line up for hours, you know, with thousands of people? What were you expecting? What were you expecting from the turnout?
Man, I had no idea. I really didn't. I knew nothing about acting. So I was with the other actors who were really, you know, excited and pumped, and you could feel the energy, and they, you know, thought it was pretty cool, and they knew there was a ton of competition. I could clearly see there was competition, but I didn't really understand much else beyond that, you know. I just thought, okay, competition. I've been competing since since the beginning. So the feeling or the fear of competing wasn't tough for me. All I did was just kind of, I was like, all right, time to step up the game, you know, time to try harder, give it everything I got, and that's what I did. And I'll be damned if it didn't work out. You know, it was pretty amazing.
And obviously, after all this, you were cast as Jason, the leader of the Rangers. Were you a leader through school? It sounds like you had quite a decent upbringing with kind of a hardened sort of father, so he would have given you some leadership qualities. Were you surprised to become, I guess, the leader of the pack, even having no acting experience?
I didn't really, you know, I was so naive and clueless at the time. I really didn't understand what it all meant. I was 17 when I signed the contract. I was 18 when I was told I got it. And man, I had no idea what was coming. So I kind of rolled with it, and I had a great time. And as the character developed, you know, I developed, and the directors and producers saw something in me I didn't know I had. Later in life, I used it in the Middle East, and you know, in other aspects of my life as a medic. But at 17, I had no clue, and I think it's probably a fair portion of why I turned out to be the guy that I turned out to be, and my ability to handle pressure and to be a role model, aside from my father, who was probably the best image of all of it for me.
Did they give you any kind of acting lessons or acting help?
My lessons happened on the set, Nope, that was horrible. Try this. Nope, that was better. Try this way. Why don't you try this? And it was pretty much how, I mean, it was cameras were there, people were there, and it was go time. That's pretty much how my lessons happened.
I've talked to quite a few other of the Ranger actors, and they all talk about the intense work schedule that you had to keep. Being only 17, were you happy to have a full-time job, or were you concerned about the show not being a union show? Were you aware of what the union was, and that you probably weren't being paid what you deserved for the amount of work you were all putting in? Were you aware of all of that, or were you just happy to have a job?
Well, I was happy to have the job, and I certainly wouldn't have been aware of any of it if I hadn't been working with much more experienced actors who were able to explain to me the here to, what for, and what the deal really is. So I got an education process, but I was kind of I felt like an outsider. You know, even though I was a very close-knit part of the team with the guys, because everybody knew more about everything, I still kind of felt like I did moving around as a teenager. So I kind of just sat back and I waited a lot and tried to figure out where am I going to fit in, how am I going to do this, what's my part. And I focused a lot there because I had no idea what I was going to do. So it was a day-by-day development, very spontaneous thing for me. And it was great. What a roller coaster ride. And it was intense, though. I mean, the work schedule was absolutely insane. I mean, I remember 14, 18-hour days, and as the leader, I mean, I was filming constantly. So I was in front of camera doing face footage, I was off doing stuff, or I was in the ADR room doing voiceover, and then I was back, and we'd get out at 10 o'clock at night, and we'd be back on set at 4 or 5 a.m., and it was 6 days a week that way for the first year. It was nuts.
So in saying that you were it took you a little while to find your feet in the show, do you think you were kind of, I guess, pushed into making a stand a year later, or a year and a half later when you left the show, or were you happy to stand up for what you believed was right?
No, I chose to make a stand.
Yep.
I've never, again, moving around a lot as a Marine son, and Mom was a cop. Discipline was instantaneous in my house, and I also learned what it was to stand by your beliefs. And I knew that we were having trouble, you know, handling some basic things in our lives while the owner of the show was making $1 billion the first year. And it pissed me off to no end. I've always been a guy that's pulled for the underdog. I always believe in pulling people up with me on my way if I'm going. And I'm happy to help others if they're doing better than I am and help them on their way. And I can't stand to see people that are not that way. I understand it's part of humanity, but it's not a part I want to be around any more than I have to. So I was definitely part of speaking my voice, putting it out there for the producers, the directors. I talked with the other actors, told them what I was going to do. It was no secret. And I finally gave my ultimatum, and they chose not to help us out, not to change things and make it better. At which point I said goodbye.
Did you ever get to meet?
And they said goodbye too.
Did you ever get to meet Saban face to face?
Oh yeah, I mean from the beginning.
What was your original impression of him?
I mean, he was reasonably nice. He was never rude, or you know. I've heard some real horror stories, but I don't have any personal. You know, he was an ass to me or a jerk or anything like that. He didn't strike me as an overly friendly, outgoing guy. He definitely struck me as business-oriented and was very intelligent. And I would stand by that today. But, you know, there weren't any warm and fuzzies. You know, he was happy to see something he had worked for years starting to come together in the beginning. And he certainly did a ton of work. He stuck with it for years to make it happen and to get it picked up by, to even get it looked at by TV stations. And when it finally did, there should have been a lot of credit and whatnot for him, but it sure would have been nice if he could have helped us out a little more along the way. And he's one of those guys that I did this, it's mine.
I read that you described your newfound fame from Power Rangers as bittersweet. What were the positives and negatives for you?
Well, it was bittersweet in that initially the fame and the adoration that came from the fans was amazing. But at least for me, I've always been a guy who's enjoyed my privacy, which is why I disappeared so quickly years later. And I got to a point where I realized I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. Everything I said or did, no matter where it happened, was being photographed, recorded, watched like a hawk. And, I was no Marlon Brando or Tom Cruise or any one of these big kahunas, but people were watching me and the others like that. And, we've got examples all throughout history about what price people have paid to get their freedom. And I didn't feel like I was free. It was nuts when I couldn't go out on a date without paparazzi taking photos and, selling them to the tabloids in the morning. I mean, that was just beyond me. I didn't understand that. And, so amazing. I got to be be around the fans. I got to see and be a part of the adoration. I got to help people, uplift lives and change lives in such amazing ways. And that was incredible. But the downside was I kind of felt like I was a 17, 18-year-old boy growing up in Hollywood, and it was a lot for me. And I couldn't go anywhere. I wasn't sure who my friends really were. And so I needed to step away. And it's good that I did when I did, because I don't know how I might have turned out if I hadn't. Not saying I turned out well. That's for the world to discover, but I wonder.
What was your first impression of the show? The word campy has been used quite often in the other interviews I've done. Would you describe it any other way?
No, that sums it up. I mean, I might throw in another curveball there and say corny. Campy, corny. I had a heck of a time trying to say any of my lines with a straight face. I hadn't seen the show in Japan, so I had no mental concept or image to base what I was saying on. So it was really hard to figure out what in the hell was going on when I was trying to read these lines. And, it was fun, though. Campy, corny, but a lot of fun. When I couldn't figure it out, we laughed. There were some really foolish and funny mistakes. There's some outtakes that I swear if they ever release them, could win every comedy competition on TV, probably worldwide. I mean, hilarious stuff. But it was fun and campy and corny, and that is why the world fell in love with it. Or one of the reasons, anyway.
What do you think of the other reasons?
Well, there was action. You had all kinds of colors. You had robots, dinosaurs, fighting, swords. I mean, it's 90% of my fan base is boys. And what boy doesn't love dinosaurs, swords, fighting, martial arts? I mean, they're almost all of them are into that. So it was captivating right from the get-go. Secondly, there was nothing like it on TV, pretty much in the English-speaking world. So it didn't have competition. There was no premise for it. And this is where I come back to Haim. He created something outside of Japan that hadn't been done, and the world went nuts over it. There was nothing like it out there. It took Thundercats and Voltron and G.I. Joe and ninjas and all of these cool things from all these coolest characters and fantasies, and put them in one show to like guitar screaming music, and it was just the coolest thing on the planet, and everybody loved it.
So, in hindsight, were you surprised that it got to number one so quickly?
I was blown away. I mean, we had heard it was gaining popularity, but we were filming so much that at least I hadn't really had a whole lot of time out in public to experience it yet. And so it was pretty weird for me when we found out it was number one. I was sitting on set with Walter, and the producer came down, and it was late. We'd been filming all day. Walter and I were just tired. And we're sitting in our chairs, I think, greeting our sides, getting ready for the next scene. And the producer came down and said, "Hey, I thought I'd let you know your show has gone to number one in the world. Number one children's show in the world, blah, 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 best Nielsen ratings in history." And then he turned around and went upstairs, and Walter and I just kind of looked at each other, and we're like, did that just happen? Like, really? And then we went back to reading our sides. We were so tired, and me especially. I was like, what's a Nielsen rating? What does that mean? Who? What? So it had to be explained to me again because I had no concept. And so it was, that's kind of how we found out. And then we finally got some time off after the first year, and we got to go out in the public and really experience what in the heck was really going on. And that's really when it hit us. That and Universal Studios.
I've seen videos on YouTube from Universal Studios. It was packed. It's huge. It looks incredible.
Yeah, it was supposed to be one show with 1,000 people, and it turned into 6 shows where they packed the house over capacity at 6,000 full up, and then there was probably another 10,000 or more outside that never got in. I mean, it was insane.
Oh, I couldn't imagine it. I've seen videos, like Van Halen doing the same kind of thing on YouTube, and to kind of put Power Rangers in that rock star kind of category is just incredible. And you guys got to experience it. Yeah, that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. I hadn't thought of it like that, but that's what it was like. I mean, just people screaming. I remember coming up on stage, and I had these pyrotechnics, and I did this big backflip off of this 20-foot platform onto the stage, and I went into a martial arts demo. And when I came up, I remember all of the lights. I had my helmet on, and it was tinted, so it was like if you watch Star Trek, and when they go to warp speed, how all the lights kind of blur and stretch out in their vision in front of the screen. That's what it was like for my visor. And the pyrotechnics blew up behind me as I did this huge backflip, and I went into this martial arts demo, and just people screaming, going nuts. And I had nothing to compare that with. I hadn't even been to a rock concert yet. And man, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
You think the Beatles, you think Van Halen, you think guys like Elvis, and then you think Power Rangers, and it's hard to try and link them all together. But that's it. That's it right there.
Yeah, I guess if you look at global impact, we were in 40 countries and 90 languages around the world, and that ties in with an Elvis Presley or the Beatles. Different age fandom. But like them, we've also stretched now 3 generations. I have grandparents coming in with their children, all watching the show, lines that go on for forever, coming in for autographs on the weekends here in the America. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in Australia. And it's mind-blowing. And to hear the stories of how people grew up and how we affect their lives and the positive impact that my castmates and I had. Sometimes I just don't even know how to respond. People tell you, I didn't commit suicide because of you. I had the strength to carry on or to not do drugs because of you or your castmates or, all of you. Or, my parents were abusive and that you were the 1 hour a day on TV that I got to forget it all and be happy. God, how do you have a heart and how do you respond to that? I just don't even know what to say sometimes. It's just, wow. Wow.
And you're still reasonably young. You're not quite into middle-aged yet. Spanning is the nicest way to put it without giving away your exact age. Spanning over 3 generations, does that make you feel older than you are chronologically?
No, not at all. I was the youngest on the show. I bet the other guys feel old.
Yeah, exactly.
that makes me proud. I was the baby on the show. So, some of these guys have got, 8-10 years on me. And so that makes me laugh. In fact, I give some of them a hard time about it quite regularly. And they're like, we hate you. I'm like, well, don't worry. I'm wearing a beard now. And, I finally got a few grays coming in a couple of places. And I'm like, I tell you what, I'll let the grays stay just so you guys don't feel bad. Because if I shave, I lose 10 years immediately. And people are like, I hate you.
So is that why you've kept the beard?
Well, I grew it because I was in the Middle East, and it was, I had a pretty good beard over there, which is one of those things that helped to keep me alive. And I kind of became partial to it. It was almost 4 years since I'd even seen my face completely clean-shaven, until I got back and did it just, a month ago. And, now it's usually a couple days growth, maybe 3-4 days growth I keep.
Yeah. And the long work hours obviously gave you some time to bond with your castmates, but halfway through the first season, we were introduced to David Frank, obviously playing Tommy. It's known around the fandom that you two don't really mix. But do you remember the first time that you met him? How do you remember him on set? Was he someone you got along with, or did you clash from the start? What was kind of the deal there?
Well, we never clashed. I mean, that I remember. I don't remember the first day that I met him, or what the first day on set was. There wasn't any epic battle or stare down or anything like that. I remember at some point he came on set and we worked, and we had some really cool episodes, and we did some good stuff. So it's not that we don't clash. It's just that we never hung out. We weren't beer drinking buddies or anything like that. He did his thing, I did mine, and that's still the way it is. I haven't seen the guy since Forever Red, so it's been maybe an episode a day or two to film those, and before that I hadn't seen him since the movie, I think since Turbo. So he's doing what he does, and that's what I'm doing. We're all kind of doing our thing now. A lot of time has gone by.
Then you Twin Walter, obviously left the show halfway through the second season. I read you had very little money and lived out of your car with your dog. Were you set on pursuing acting as a career at that stage?
No, I had left. I was done. I had gone to Arizona. I was teaching martial arts during the day. I was bouncing at night at a nightclub, and just trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with myself. I kind of was a nomad for a while, and it wasn't a fun time, but I think it was a needed time in my life. I had to learn a different side of responsibility and freedom and decision making that I hadn't really learned quite yet. So, I grew up a lot, and I was pretty poor. It wasn't long I was living like that, but it was long enough to make an impact, and I've never forgotten it.
Did you ever go back to live with your parents, or once you got onto Power Rangers, you just never thought of going back home?
Later on, I had stopped in and stayed with them for a while, but it was always a swing in and then stay for a bit and get a little money saved, and then I was out the door on my own. I just, much like my childhood, I was always moving from place to place, just trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And it was a process. I had to meet a lot of other people and see what the real world was like and what working real jobs was like and what being a real man was like. And I did it all over the country. I traveled a lot around the world. And when I finally got back, I got into emergency medicine and, became a paramedic and got all sorts of training after that and beyond that. And then I ended up 12 years in the D.C. area, 4 years in the Middle East, and working as a medic attached to military operations. And, I like what I learned after that. And it was good. It was a really good experience.
When you returned to Power Rangers as the Gold Ranger in Zeo and then stayed on for the movie, did they ask you back, or did you ask to go back? Were you welcomed back with open arms? Was it hard to try and forgive and forget about how you'd left the show previously?
No, they called me, and I had agreed to meet with them. There was no anger, there was no screw you or what the hell. It wasn't even discussed. It was just, hey, we got a new idea. Why don't you come back and check this out? And I thought, well, you know what? Let me hear what he has to say. So I went and sat down with Shuki Levy, who was Haim's right-hand man, and we talked on a movie set for another film they were shooting. And I was like, all right, yeah, screw it. Let's give this a shot, see what happens.
And did money ever come up in those conversations?
No, of course. And it was much better the second time.
Oh, it was much better the second time.
Yeah.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
good. Right. So that was must have been part of the reason that you decided to return, that you were getting a bit better pay, and that you obviously didn't have to live out of your car for that year that you were back on the show.
Right.
And after you left Power Rangers this time, you mentioned you finished studies and became a paramedic. What drew you towards the medical field?
A, the adrenaline, and B, I'd been playing this superhero on TV, And then I met guys that were medics and firefighters and SWAT team members, and I thought, geez, these guys are real heroes, you know. And I'd grown up around military personnel. They were heroes, and cops, they were heroes. And I thought, well, what's stopping me from doing something like this for real? And so I looked at each of the fields, and I liked the intense education that went into being a paramedic, because it is really intense. There's no joke about it. People live and die based on decisions that you make, either right or wrong, and there's no forgiveness many times. So that appealed to me. I liked that, and I thought, well, instead of playing a hero on TV, let me step up to the plate and try this in real life. And I fell in love with it. Made an entire career out of it, and was very successful. And I'm very happy with it. I'm still a paramedic.
And you mentioned you worked in Washington as a paramedic for 12 years. Was it hard to not have that, like, I guess, stress, or knowing that you're going to have to move around every other year to a new place, that you were just situated in the one place for 12 years? That must have been a bit of a difference for you.
It definitely was. You know, I found an anchor point once I really got involved into medicine. So I moved around the area. You know, it was actually the Northern Virginia area. I just tell most people the D.C. area because they don't really understand the proximity and how close it all is. But everybody knows where D.C. is, so it's easier to tell people it's right there, even though it's really 25 minutes away from there. But nonetheless, I did some moving around. You know, I had some other odd jobs. You know, I never worked one job. I always had two or three. That was just what I did. And it's taken me a long time to kind of settle, you know, and I'm still a bit of a nomad. I have a hard time sitting still. You know, I got home today from Evansville, Indiana, and tomorrow morning I get on a flight for Australia, you know, so I'm still hopping all over the place. Being
a paramedic in Washington, D.C., the only thing an Australian knows about Washington, D.C. without actually having been there is that the president lives there. Did you ever get called to the White House?
No. No, I definitely did not.
I
was at the Pentagon. I was at the Pentagon for 9/11, but never made the White House.
No. Oh wow. So 9/11, you were a paramedic, and you got called as, I guess, back up to the Pentagon. Was that must have been a huge adrenaline rush? Is that something that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just overwhelming. I mean, I remember the all page went out. I wasn't even on duty that day, and my girlfriend at the time was on her way into college, and she was listening to the radio, and she started blowing up my phone. And then I looked over at my pager and realized my pager had been going off for the fire station. And she says, "You're not going to believe this. Turn on the TV." And I'm grabbing my gear and I'm rushing into the firehouse, and we were on duty for almost 2 weeks straight, trying to get things cleaned up and cleared up. It wasn't near as bad as New York, but it was not a good place to be.
What persuaded you, or what was the decision behind going to the Middle East, and how did you get picked to go to the Middle East, or was it your decision to go and work with the armed forces?
It was extremely competitive, very hard to get in over there. And again, I'd grown up around a military family, and I thought, okay, well, I've done this in the civilian world. Let me see what I can do now about taking care of those who are serving this country that I love. And I fought pretty hard. I had a good resume. I learned a lot about how to put together government resumes. And I had the experience in the background, and I finally got hired after extensive background and clearances and all kinds of, you know, drug testing and everything that they go through to make sure that you're clean. You know, you're not a criminal. All of these things you have to go through. And then you have the interview process, and finally you get it, and next thing you know, you're on a plane, and life changes immediately. What an eye-opening experience.
What was kind of your setup in the Middle East, and what did you do? Were you a paramedic for the soldiers? Were you set up in a little bunker, or did you have your own little cabin, or what was your kind of setup?
In Kuwait, the last contracts that I had were in Kuwait. My first 6 months there, I was in a tent. And it was boiling hot, even with the air conditioner on blast full time. And we were on the base. We took care of all the soldiers, medics, EMTs, soldiers, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, any personnel that were there, including DoD contractors and people like that. And then as time went on, I ended up, again, thankfully having a successful career. I ended up moving to other locations. And towards the end, I actually finally made it to a command base with bricks and a wall and real air conditioning. And you still sweat inside, 24/7, you see on high. But at least the sand is cut down a little bit. I mean, not really in a good sandstorm. Nothing keeps the sand out, but it was hot. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of pressure. And it was what it was. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot. I definitely was able to affect lives often, and now that I've done it, I'm glad to be home.
Are there differences in the lessons that you learnt from living in the Middle East for 4 years as opposed to having a lifetime of martial arts training? Do some of the lessons overlap? Did you take more from your experiences in the Middle East? What are some of the lessons that you've kind of learnt from either, and some that you've merged together from both kind of lifestyles?
Well, I mean, some of them certainly overlap. You got to take patience everywhere you go. And it's patience and observation and discipline and focus, humility. Don't need to go with you everywhere, and those are in martial arts. And those are things that I think have helped me do so well anywhere I've traveled. But I think that there was definitely some different lessons in that I learned that, not all Muslims are evil. There's a thing that's called a terrorist. And a terrorist is just an evil person that happens to practice Islam. It's not a Muslim thing. It's just a bad guy. Like you have bad Catholics or bad atheists or bad any group. It's not the group as a whole. It's a couple of bad apples giving a lot of people a bad name. And so that was one of the very first lessons I learned. And I actually have friends to this day that are amazing that I've befriended who practice Islam and are devout Muslim, and they're great people, And then I saw some harder sides of things. I saw true terrorism. I saw some horrible stuff. Not in Kuwait, in Iraq, but so I got to see a lot of it, and basically it set me up so that it's really hard to shake me, to get me angry or upset, or to shock me. I mean, I've seen enough, I've been through enough in my life that I'm a pretty relaxed kind of guy. I'm pretty chill. And, people sometimes think that means that I don't care. They'll see the world falling apart, and I'll stroll in and do my job, take care of what it is I need to do, and then stroll on out. And they're like, see, he just doesn't care. I'm like, no. It's just that it's really hard to get me worked up because I've been doing it since I was so little, for one reason or another. Whether it was new kids in school that wanted to bully me in the schoolyard, or whether it was helping somebody getting his butt kicked at school, not get his butt kicked, or whether it was being a medic, making life-saving decisions, or whether it was in the Middle East, trying to keep myself and the guy next to me alive from one moment to the next. And being a father now is, I have so many different experiences to draw on. I just couldn't be more grateful for it. Some of them I wish I'd never learned, of course, but that's life.
Are you following at the moment what's going on in the Middle East with ISIS and, that terrorist group and its expansion throughout the world? Do you have an opinion on that? Do you still have friends in the Middle East that are fighting them as well?
Of course. My opinion, well, I don't know if we really want to get into politics on this.
Not too heavy.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. The war between Christianity and Islam and infidels, meaning non-believers, whether it's Christian or anybody that doesn't believe in Islam the way they believe in Islam, even other Muslims, has been raging since Islam was created. And it's not going to end in any of our lifetimes, ever. There is nothing any government, any guns, any bombs, any weapons are ever going to do to put an end to it, short of absolute genocide, which no one is going to let happen today anyway.
I've heard you mention numerous times that some of the people you've helped have recognized you from Power Rangers. Was that something that you enjoyed? Did it make the job like tougher than it would have been otherwise? Did you get a bit of a laugh out of it, or have a bit of a joke in the ambulance, I guess? Or even when you were a security guard, you mentioned before, did you get recognized as a Power Ranger from there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of times it was, people would laugh. You'd get a lot of smiles. I'd get the inevitable questions, and, you'd see the inner 5-year-old and grown men come bubbling out all of a sudden, like, oh, my God, you were that guy. And, they just lose their mind, and you see their hands start trembling, and, I see grown men start crying, and just not even know what to say. They just break down, and because they're standing in front of someone that they idolized as a child. And, that was pretty amazing for me to see. And it ends up in a bro hug or a handshake, and, we kind of talk it off. And, for that time, I'm like, hey, man, how about we go get some coffee, or, let's have a cold beer or something. Let's just sit down and talk. I'm human, brother. I promise. I don't bite, So, and then, inevitably there'll be some buddies in the background who are playing it cool, and they'll be, laughing, and everybody has a good time. So even today, people, it's just so positive. It's so positive. And it's hard to believe that I could be refreshed looking at the faces of fans who watched me 20 years ago and still see that light in their eye and a smile on their face, and see the glow that comes out from their inner child. And I understand it completely, because I recently met, Batman and the Incredible Hulk, and these were people that, I watched, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool, So it's the most heartwarming thing on the planet, and it never ceases to put a smile on my face.
And now you've come back to the fandom, and I must admit you're keeping a pretty impressive convention schedule at the moment, traveling all around the world. You've been to England, you've been all around America. Now you're coming out to Australia. What was the decision process in coming back from Iraq and getting back into the convention circuit, as opposed to going back to paramedicine? Did you want to give back to the fans a little bit before you went back to I guess quote unquote real life?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't realize the fans were still, where they were. I didn't realize it was still such a big thing. I didn't realize there were so many that wanted to meet and talk and take photos. I mean, it blew my mind. I was on the Kuwaiti-Iraqi border when I was talking with Walter via cell, and I was telling him, I was like, hey, man, I'm getting ready to punch my ticket, go home. I'm going to retire a captain, and I've had a great career. And, I need a break from Band-Aids and bullets and ambulances and, all this stuff. I got to find something different. And he was like, well, you wouldn't believe what I'm doing. I'm doing conventions. I'm out meeting our fans. And the first thing he said to me is, he says, dude, they've grown up. And I was like, no, they haven't. Stop. Come on. Just kind of trying to give him a hard time. He's like, no, really, man. He's like, but wait until you hear the stories. And he told me some of the stories that he's heard, and wow, I mean, no joke. It's just, like I was telling you earlier, some of the most amazing stories, and it's just amazing. So, I came back. Originally I was going to do one show, and then one show's turned into like 20, and now we're booking shows through 2016. I still don't have an acting agent, but I've had 4 movies now drop in my lap. So I'm looking at new projects. In fact, I've got a script I'm going to read on the flight tomorrow on the way down. And, so it's just, I wasn't planning on coming back to acting or doing this full time. I think it kind of attacked me. And I'm trying to defend myself and survive the process, but I'm enjoying every step of the way. It's just great.
You're probably going to need more than one script for the flight over. Are you stopping in LA first, or are you coming straight through to Australia?
Well, I just stopped into Florida today to see some people. So I'll go to Dallas. I'll go from Dallas to LAX, then I'll go from LAX to, I don't remember where it is I fly into, but eventually I hit Adelaide and then I think Brisbane, and then I go out through Melbourne all the way back to LAX. So it's going to be quite a flight.
Wow.
It'll be a good time. So yeah, probably a couple movies, a few scripts, and my pillow.
Yeah, a bit of shut-eye as well.
Yeah.
How has the first year been? Is it overwhelming? I mean, obviously the fans love you because you're the original leader. Has it got overwhelming for you? Have you needed that sleep time? Has sleep become more important to you than it otherwise was? It would have been pretty important to you living in the Middle East or being a paramedic, but does sleep have a whole new meaning now that you're part of the convention circuit?
It really does. One of the hardest things about it, like right now, I mean, my voice isn't what it normally is because I use it constantly on the weekends. So sometimes I come back and I'm hoarse. I've almost lost my voice. Right now, my voice is still recovering, and I'm looking forward to the flight and my headphones so I can, let my voice rest. But sleep has been it's insane because all these different places I've been are in different time zones, and a lot of them are in different temperatures. So yesterday I was in 3 inches of snow. The day after tomorrow I'm going to be in 90-degree weather? Is that what I'm being told? 80, 90s out there?
If you can put it into Celsius, I can help you figure that out.
Okay, yeah. So
basically
springtime.
Yeah, spring and going into summer. Adelaide, it's a little bit colder, but once you get up to Brisbane, it'll be over 30 degrees Celsius. I think 100 Fahrenheit is about 33 or 34 degrees Celsius, something like that, or 35. So it gets pretty hot because 100 Fahrenheit's like very hot, yeah. Yeah. So that I think that's about 35 or 33 degrees Celsius. So yeah, when you hit Brisbane, it'll be a little bit hotter than it is in Adelaide. Adelaide's down south, so it's not as tropical.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously you're coming down to Australia. Have you been out here before?
Years and years ago, I was in Sydney for a martial arts competition. But, I mean, it would have been 15, 16 years ago. And I was visiting a buddy who was doing some competing there and helping coach him through some stuff. But I've never been back for vacation or fun. So this will be the first time. I'm really glad there's two conventions a week apart, or a week or so apart, because it gives me some time in between to see things. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Do you ever see, getting back with Jason David Frank and reacquainting for the fandom, maybe for the next Power Morphicon or something? Or is that a bit further down the track than...
I really have no idea. His schedule and my schedule are booked. We're kind of going where we can go based on availability. And I think actually next year he's booked exclusively with something called Wizard World. So maybe in 16 or 17, but I think we're both trying to survive our current schedules right now. So we've had a few email exchanges, but we certainly haven't nailed anything down that far out in relation to that yet.
And do you have any intention of returning to the paramedical field or going back to the Middle East, or are you happy sitting in the convention circuit for the time being?
I don't know. I have to see what the cards hold. I love medicine. I love teaching. So at some point I'm going to have to go back to it somewhere. But whether I'll completely step away from the convention circuit or not, probably not. But I may cut back significantly. And not so much for my career. That would be mostly for my family. I love my boys, and I've got a baby girl on the way, and I have a wonderful wife.
Congratulations.
And I just... Thank you. I cherish the moments that I have with them. Tonight I get one night, and then I'm gone for 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to having more time with them, and I think family would probably be the driving factor. That's actually one of the biggest reasons I came back from the Middle East.
Do you get to take your family with you to any of the conventions?
Yeah, I've taken them to a few. Absolutely. I don't do a lot of them because the boys are so small that it's really hard on them. So, but my oldest, he loves it. He goes in and gets to see all these people in cosplay and costumes, and Daddy, that's Spider-Man, and Daddy, that's another Power Ranger, and Daddy, who's that? And Daddy, that looks scary. What is this? What is that? So his 4-year-old mind is just imagination all over the place. and how cool is it to be 4 at these conventions. So he absolutely loves it. But my 20-month-old, he's just energy with feet, and trying to keep him contained. Holy cow, what a workout. Running that boy down. My wife is my hero, I got to tell you.
Ready to get into some fan questions.
All right.
So Angie Asdani from Hagerstown, Maryland, obviously in the United States, says, my question is, what would Jason be doing had you decided to stay on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and, the pay dispute was resolved? What would Jason be up to?
I think Jason would be carrying on and leading by example. I think he would be leading the charge when it was needed, and I think that he would be taking the time to make sure that he trained in the new recruits and taught them the core ethics and values of the Rangers.
Shane Graham from South Penrith, New South Wales in Australia says, my question is, what Ranger did you like being more, the Gold Ranger or the Red Ranger?
Boy, I love them both for totally different reasons. The Red Ranger is kind of like the sun in the universe, or mom's apple pie, or whatever it is that brings you home the core of something very important to you. That was the Red Ranger. That's what that character meant to me. But the Gold Ranger was just really cool. He was the 6th Ranger. It was like Saturn with all of its really cool rings, and it looks cool, and he's got this this cool pyramid, and he does things differently but cool. So he was kind of the loud version of the Red Ranger, but they were just both really cool. So I love them both. It's a tough choice.
Zach Davis from Glendale, Arizona asks, did the producers ask you about David Yost's sexuality at all, and how did that go if they did?
No, never once. I was never approached about that. I was a pretty vociferous guy, and I made it pretty clear that I didn't care. He was his own man, and that was for him to decide, It was a good question, though.
Gerald Anthony Dunn from New York City asks, do you practice any form of martial arts? Do you still practice your martial arts?
In the Middle East, we did combatives. It wasn't competitive forms of martial arts. It was designed strictly for combat. Since I've been back, I haven't had time to practice because I'm on the road 5 out of 7 days of the week. But I really, truly am looking forward to getting back to it, and I'm looking to maybe pick up a new art that I haven't really been involved in. Maybe Wing Chun. I'd like to get back into Krav Maga, but it's going to depend on where I settle and what's available. Maybe some more Kenpo.
I have a friend that does Krav Maga. He absolutely loves it.
It's great.
Yeah. Bradley Scott King from Tennessee asks, ASJ, will you be coming back to Dino Charge? He's from Bristol, Tennessee.
Right now, none of the college have a contract for Dino Charge. It's actually in pre-production in New Zealand, and I think it's right about to begin filming. I don't think any of the original Rangers are involved in Dino Charge, or the new movie for that matter. So, but I could be mistaken. I can tell you I don't currently have any contracts. I just recently had a conversation with the executive producers. They heard I'm back from the Middle East, and they were really excited. But let's see what the future holds.
Oh, I've seen ads for the new Power Rangers movie in 2016, and there's rumours. I've seen pictures that Liam Hemsworth, an Australian boy, is going to play basically you. Are you happy with that?
Well, I have no idea who that is, but
okay.
if he does, man, I wish him the best. I'd love to meet him.
Yeah, his brother is basically the new Thor. His older brother's the new Thor. So Prima de Brescia from Italy asks, what made you come back for the Turbo movie, and what was it like working with Amy Jo and JDF again?
It was probably the right time, the right place, and slightly better pay. And, they were both professionals. We did our jobs. AJ was always an amazing Pink Ranger, so it was very easy for her and I to slide back into doing our jobs, and it was the same with JDF. We choreographed our fights, we put them together in seconds. It didn't take us long, and it was great to be around everybody.
Jeremy Ponton from Canberra, Australia, the country's capital. Would you ever fight JDF in the ring?
I don't know what the point to that would be. Maybe when I was 30, when I was younger and felt the need. But I don't feel. I've seen enough battle. I really have. I've seen enough. I suppose if we were both starving and somebody threw a steak between us, it might happen. But I don't feel the need to do that, especially with a guy who is a teammate.
Lucas Borden from Adelaide, South Australia asked, well, we've had similar questions before, what made you decide to come back to the show as Zeo Gold? Did they mention what ranger you would come back as? Did they tell you anything about your character?
Yeah, they said we were thinking about bringing Jason back as the Gold Ranger. Are you interested? And they told me the premise of the Gold Ranger, and I thought, yeah, sure, why not? It seemed like fun.
Did they have a picture of the ranger suit for you before you decided?
No, not when we had the discussion.
No. William Kwan from Los Angeles asks, how was your relationship with all the other Rangers on set when filming Power Rangers?
It was a lot like a family. I mean, the original cast, the 5 of us were all cast together, and we went through the audition process together. It was just really a tight-knit family, and it was great working with everybody. We took really good care of each other. And when JDF came along later, he was immediately part of the family. So it was, and to this day, there's been 100 Rangers. I mean, they're all part of a family. When we meet each other, we're like, "Hey, man, what's up? What season are you?" Blah blah blah, and it's cool. It's a family. It's, from start to finish, it's pretty neat.
Were Paul Schreier and Jason Narvi involved in that family culture as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nicholas Scott Rayner from Wintersville, Ohio asks, Austin, what's it like to be an EMT? I've been such a huge fan of yours since Zeo. I'm an even bigger fan since I discovered that you are a paramedic now. Much, much respect. What was the toughest and strangest thing you've ever seen in the ambulance?
Well, I mean, you learn throughout emergency medicine not to share gory details or people's hardest moments. But I can tell you that, some of the hardest decisions are, without taking a real downer, I mean, I'll tell you this. At people's worst moments, you have to pay them enough respect, show them enough love to be honest with them. And that can be incredibly hard. It can be incredibly powerful. Sometimes it's just enough to give them a moment to say their final goodbyes. And it can be gut-wrenching, but it can be the most powerful thing on the planet because it can be what the families need to hear. So it's bittersweet.
Christopher Craig wants to know, so doing TV shows I know can be stressful. What was the typical day of filming like? He's from Largo, Maryland.
Yeah, it was, get up at 4, be on set by 4:30, 5 o'clock, makeup, wardrobe, which, usually took longer for the ladies, sometimes for Bulk and Skull, depending on the costumes. And then there was lighting, and then there was, the grips doing their job, director, do a lighting test, then you go back, and you wait, and then you stand there, and you wait, and then you shoot, and then it just goes on and on and on, and it repeats all day long. And, you start at 4, 5, and you finish at, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, depending. So it was long, long days in the beginning of the season. It got a little better later on, second season, but first season was really tough. Long days.
Becca Kinsey from Flintstone, Georgia wants to know, what's it like knowing after all these years kids still look up to you?
It's one of the most humbling things out there. It certainly inspires me all the time to try and continue to better my life and to earn that respect, to not let those children down. What a horrible thing, the feeling of letting someone you love down. And it's something else to know that maybe you did something that let down a whole world of children that look up to you. So it's an immense responsibility, but it's one of the most impressive and amazing feelings I think any human with any form of compassion could have. It wows me.
Kelsey Hoover from Bradford, Pennsylvania. If you could have been in any other season than the two you were in, which one would it be and why?
I think I would have gone back to some of the original Japanese series, like the original first season. As far as the other seasons after me, I don't know. I haven't seen any of them. I need to do some research, but I haven't really had time since I've been back because I've been on the road. But I think I would probably have liked to have gone back to the original series in Japan.
And I've saved the best question for last. Nathan Short from Bessemer, Alabama wants to know, how many hot girls did you have at the parties you and Walter would host at the house you all lived in together?
I don't even think I can count that high.
You're going to need more than two hands?
Oh, man. We had some of the most amazing girls from, Janet Jackson's dance tours and other professional dance tours that were out there. Stunt girls, stunt guys. We had, all of our friends were in the business, so models, actresses, pro dancers from the dance circuit. I mean, it was amazing.
Do you have some photos stored away at the back of your wardrobe or something?
Oh, the back of my mind.
The back of your mind, right. Oh God! And any stories you want to share? Any fun things that stand out that you remember? Someone falling over, or
oh God, there's so many.
Slipping on beer.
Walter was notorious. Walter was notorious for coming into the living room, and from the dining room, which we actually took the dining table out and put it on a pool table. And he would come in from the dining room, and there was 2 steps down in the living room, and he would always run in and do a front flip into the living room at parties. And, everybody loved it. And we had this 14-foot trampoline in the back of the house where, I would go out back of the night, and everybody else, we were stunt guys and everything. And we would just bust flips and Russians and all kinds of things and all various versions and forms and flips and twists and create stuff. And, half the time after... not paying attention, or it would get dark, or maybe one of the guys that had a beer, somebody would go up and miss, or, land on his butt and go flying halfway across the yard, and, the whole place would be in stitches and just laughing and having a great time. And, we had parties that were so big, we had people in our house, we didn't know who they were. We'd walk up to each other and be like, hey, man, do you know them? And they're like, no, I don't know them. Hey, let's go see if Danny knows them. We go over to Danny. Danny, do you know those guys? No, you don't know them either. Okay, let's go talk to Nick. Nick, do you know those guys? No, nobody knows them. Okay, well, should we let them stay? Yeah, sure, why not? And, and then we'll just go on. It was always friendly. We never once had a fight at our place. Everybody got along. It was just cool. It was really chill, and the parties were legendary. Everybody wanted to be there. So it was a lot of fun.
And one last question from me before we finish up. Over the last, 4 or 5 years while you've been in the Middle East, I'm assuming you wouldn't have had much access to social media. How have you found the transition into the social media world?
It's been a lot like drinking from a fire hose, I got to tell you.
Have you tried that?
Man, there's a lot of information, a lot of know-how and stuff like that, and it's kind of weird, it's kind of invasive. It's in your life, and everybody wants details, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how to walk the line and how to be in touch with my fans and share it with them without sharing too much, So it's been pretty neat. I mean, I don't hate social media. I think I'm learning to like it the more I learn about it, and learn how to use it as the tool that it is. And I think the fans have really shown a lot of appreciation for it. My page, I took over a page that I wasn't attached to. I asked to join it. It had 7,000 people on it in April. And I think we're somewhere under 200,000 right now, like 170 or 180, something like that. And so the fans have been enjoying it. They've been coming in left and right on Facebook, and it's been great. It really is. I'm hearing more stories. I get lots of photos, and so it's really neat to be a part of something so much bigger.
Yeah, not that you really need it. It's kind of building up quite quickly at the moment. But do you want to plug your social media?
Sure, okay. Austin St. John, if you just go in and you Google Austin St. John, you can, and there's quite a few that are out there, but mine's the one with the blue symbol, the Star of Life, and a red helmet with a foot on it. It's got about, I think we're at about 180,000 people right now. I've got Twitter, which is ASG Austin, and I've got Instagram, which is Austin_Saint_John. And then I have a web store, which probably would be really great for folks in Australia, since I can't get there as often as I am everywhere else, which is austinstjohn.us. And you can get, and I ship all over the world, so I do signed autographs and T-shirts and things like that. So it's, I'm trying to get out there for everybody, and I'm getting a lot of positive response. I'm enjoying being with the fans. I really am.
Cool, Austin. I will see you in Brisbane. Have a great night and have a good flight. I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.